Let me start by saying this. If you ever find yourself mapping lava tubes on the big island of Hawaii, there's more to worry about than collapsing rock or sulfur poisoning. I've been working as a geologist for the state of Hawaii for the past 12 years, specializing in lava tube exploration. Most days I'm thrilled to do the work, descend into the earth, crawl through these ancient veins of molten fire, and map their winding, otherworldly paths. But one day, I encountered something in those tubes I'll never forget. Something that nearly killed me. I wasn't alone in those tunnels. It started like any other assignment. I had a permit to explore an unmapped lava tube system on the southeastern slopes of Mauna Loa, near an area where Pele's lava flows had claimed entire towns decades ago. Locals called the place Kapuka Kahiko, roughly meaning ancient pocket. The entrance to the tube was hidden beneath thick overgrowth. I wouldn't have found it without my GPS coordinates and a machete to hack through the vines. The moment I dropped into the tube, the air felt different, stale and heavy. The glow of my headlamp danced off the black glassy walls. I documented everything: the tube's diameter, rock composition, any peculiar formations. The deeper I went, the stranger things got. About 100 yards in, I found carvings on the walls. This wasn't unusual. Lava tubes were often used by ancient Hawaiians for burial or ceremonial purposes. But these carvings didn't look like traditional petroglyphs. They were childlike, crude. Little humanoid figures with oversized heads and bulbous eyes. I snapped a few photos, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. Something about those carvings made my stomach turn. Further in, the tube narrowed into a crawl space. I hesitated. These tight passages always freaked me out. But my job was to map everything, so I squeezed through, my headlamp throwing weird shadows across the walls. That's when I noticed the silence. Absolute silence. No dripping water, no shifting rock, not even the faint hum of distant air currents. And then I heard it. A soft tapping. At first I thought it was my imagination or maybe loose rock settling, but the tapping grew louder, sharper, echoing through the tube. It wasn't random. It had rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The noise was coming from deeper in the tube. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, but curiosity, stupid, career-ending curiosity, kept me crawling forward. The passage widened into a small chamber. My headlamp illuminated piles of rocks arranged in odd stacks like makeshift cairns. In the center of the chamber was a hollowed-out area lined with what looked like straw mats. My first thought was that I'd stumbled onto an ancient burial site. But as I stepped closer, I realized the mats weren't old. They were fresh, like someone had placed them there recently. The tapping stopped. That's when I felt it. Eyes on me. I swung my headlamp around, but the beam only lit up empty rock. I whispered, "Hello?" My voice cracked, echoing back to me in distorted fragments. And then they stepped out of the shadows. They were small, maybe 3 feet tall at most, with skin the color of volcanic ash. Their heads were large and round, their eyes unnervingly big and reflective like an animal caught in headlights. They wore tattered cloths around their waists, and their long fingers ended in sharp, dirty nails. The Menehune. I had heard the legends growing up, of course. Stories about a mysterious race of small people who lived deep in the forests and mountains, building fish ponds and temples overnight. But those were just myths, tales to scare tourists or entertain kids at campfires. Seeing them in person was a different story. They didn't speak. They just stared, their unblinking eyes gleaming in the light of my headlamp. There were 5 of them, maybe 6. I couldn't move. My legs felt like jelly, my breath shallow and fast. Then one of them tilted its head like a curious dog. It raised its hand and pointed at me. Before I could react, they swarmed. They moved fast, inhumanly fast, closing the distance between us in seconds. One of them grabbed my backpack and yanked, nearly pulling me off my feet. Another clawed at my leg, its nails scraping against my thick canvas pants. I screamed, swinging my flashlight wildly. The beam caught one of them in the face, and it hissed, recoiling into the shadows. The others hesitated, their heads snapping toward the light like moths. That's when I ran. I didn't think, didn't plan. I just turned and bolted, the beam of my headlamp bouncing wildly as I scrambled back through the narrow passage. I could hear them behind me, their bare feet slapping against the rock, their primitive grunts echoing in the confined space. I reached the entrance to the tube, my lungs burning, and clawed my way out into the daylight. The sunlight seemed to stop them. I glanced back and saw their small, shadowy figures retreating into the darkness, their glowing eyes the last thing to disappear. I reported the incident to my supervisor, leaving out the part about the Menehune. I told him I'd encountered unstable rock formations and deemed the tube too dangerous to explore further. He didn't question it. I've been back to Mauna Loa since then, but I avoid Kapuka Kahiko like the plague. Sometimes, late at night, I dream about those eyes, huge and unblinking, watching me from the dark. Call me crazy if you want, but the Menehune are real, and they don't want us in their tunnels.